Listen, think about this. Let's start here. If you had 7 years to do one thing, 7 years that you campaigned to do one thing, the most important thing to your entire existence, you had 7 years to work on it, only to show up to work on today, on yesterday, and reveal that you haven't really come up with anything beyond what was already in existence. You had 7 years to find a replacement to Obamacare. But because the Republicans, due to their ideological constraints, which is a huge issue, is a big factor here. Because of their ideological constraints, the Republican Party is not capable of finding a solution that actually works and is better than Obamacare. But yet they had to show some homework. They had to show that they've done something over the last 7 years besides just be this intransigent roadblock to anything and everything the Obama administration wanted to do. They had to do something. They made too many promises to they got into power based on the fact that they were going to repeal the Obamacare, the Affordable Care Act. They got into power because of that. So they have to do something. But because of their ideological constraints, they are not able to find anything better than Obamacare. And so what do? They create Trumpcare, or the American Health Care Act, which is essentially Obamacare light, minus a couple with some tweaks on the mandates. Right. Last night, we reported that they're getting rid of the mandate. In actuality, they're not really getting rid of the mandate. They just transferred it from being a penalty tax paid to the government to now a penalty paid to insurance companies. And you had one job, Republicans. You've done nothing over the last. Can somebody tell me what the Republican Party has done over the last 7 years that would have prevented them, not only the 250 some odd Republicans that are actually there, but their staff as well, and their think tanks by extension? What the hell have they been doing over the last 7 years that they could not find a better replacement? Here's the problem. It's twofold. Number one, there is only really one solution to fixing the healthcare problem that ails the United States of America. And before I give the real solution, their ideological constraints prevent them from even considering the things that would actually bring the solutions. Like, yes, no, I'm not even going down that thought. There's no way in hell the Republican Party would ever have considered, during the original debate, they would never have considered a public option. But hell would freeze over before they would ever consider the real fix, which is the single payer system, Medicare for all. They wouldn't do that. They would never consider that, because their true desire exists inside of their conservative base. And this can be seen today as the conservative base, the Tea Party base of the Republican Party, has utterly lost their shit because of what Paul Ryan has rolled out. So now we have the luxury on the left of sitting back and watching them cannibalize themselves, because you have the rabidly right conservative wing who really doesn't want health care from the government at all. They don't want anything. They don't want anything that can be considered an entitlement, anything that could be considered a safety net. They are vehemently opposed to that. That is the rabid right. And then you have those who are elected who realize, well, we got to do something. And now Obama has introduced these things that are pretty popular. How it's not electorally viable. It's political suicide to get rid of some of these very popular things. And so now on the elected officials that are not as rabidly right, or they realize the political ramifications are too high for them to go and pacify their conservative base, they realize we had to do something, so let's give us this watered down version so that we can at least said we did something over the last 7 years, instead of waste the hell out of all of America's time. In reality, they have just literally wasted 7 years of all of our time, period. And so they come up with this. They come up with this weak tea version of Obamacare, and this is not to state. This is not to state that Obamacare was the crown jewel of healthcare. It wasn't. The problem is Obamacare is a Republican idea, but because of the nature of political opposition in general, not just in the United States, but political opposition requires the Republican Party to run against something. They couldn't possibly take the last 7 years and say, this was a pretty good idea that Obama got from us, so let's see if we can make it work. They don't get political power like that, or at least they're not willing to go the hard road and do that. Instead, they will oppose Obamacare as though it was socialism. In reality, it's so far from a single payer socialism system. It's much closer, not closer. It is a conservative healthcare system. It is a free market system with some subsidies and some requirements, some mandates. And because of that, the Republicans have nothing else that they can offer based on their ideological constraints. They can't. And so they pull this stunt, which is hilarious because it shows you exactly how impotent and devoid of substance the conservative ideology really is. Let's take a listen into Sean Spicer as he defends Trumpcare. Let's call it Trumpcare for lack of an easier phrase to say. He defends Trumpcare because unlike the Affordable Care Act, Obamacare, it's much smaller. The Affordable Care Act, Obamacare is much bigger. He literally makes this argument.
Look at the size. This is the Democrats. This is us. There is, I mean, you can't get any clearer in terms of this is government, this is not. And I think that part of the reason the visual is important is that when you actually look at the difference, you realize this is what big government does.
And so the irony of it is that a portion of the smaller document, of the smaller bill, a portion of it actually references the entire Affordable Care Act. So it was essentially saying we're smaller because we just kind of take a page and say, see the Affordable Care Act. In no form or fashion is it a streamlined version of government involvement in healthcare. But somebody is really going to take this argument and believe this argument is true. That's part one. That's just I personally can't believe. I knew he was going to do it, but I had no idea he would do it so beautifully. And can I just play it again? Like, this is something that a grown man just should not say.
Look at the size. This is the Democrats. This is us.
I'm not pointing to the short stack and saying that's not, especially not when you have tiny hands McFuckface Donald Trump as the president of the United States. All right, that's the low-hanging fruit. The real story here is the division between the conservative base and the Republican and the elected officials. Particularly, you can see it with Rand Paul. Rand Paul, who said that this legislation is essentially, it's dead on arrival. When asked about it, let's see if I can cue that up pretty decently. Let's see. This is Rand Paul talking about how this Republican House bill from Paul Ryan and the Republican caucus is dead on arrival.
Navigate, first and foremost, aspects of the legislation that are still popular in Obamacare, despite it being largely unpopular, but also you coming out against it, some of your colleagues already coming out against the House Republican plan. Is this proposal dead?
Yes, it's dead on arrival. I think what we want is we want it to be repealed, and we want it to be replaced with something that allows more people to get insurance at a cheaper price. This is just another government program. Has new entitlements, new taxes. This is not what conservatives want. So we're going to have a big, robust debate on it. Today, in front of the Capitol, conservatives are going to say, we want clean repeal.
All right, so they want to. Rand Paul is a libertarian whose wet dream is to have no safety nets whatsoever, and so that's why he's totally okay with the repeal. Based on a report that I just saw come across my screen from thehill.com, a clean, not even just a repeal, but the House Republicans' version of Obamacare, Trumpcare, which essentially just is putting, a weaker and paler face on Obamacare, but I digress, said that it would cost 6 to 8 million people to lose their coverage, right? Out of the, I believe, between 11 and 18 million that are on, 6 to 11 would lose their coverage. That's not enough for the conservative base. The conservative base wants it gone. And in exchange, they want to offer tort reform, which is supposed to bring down the cost of insurance and the cost of healthcare in general, which would subsequently cause the cost of insurance to go down according to. They don't want this to exist at all. These are your elected officials, Republicans. These are the people that you elected. Here's one last clip that I want to play, and it shows you how uninformed even the people who are promoting this this Paul Ryan healthcare super secret bill that just got released today, or yesterday rather. It shows you they don't even know what's in it. Not for real. This is a reporter asking a question of Health and Human Services secretary about a particular provision in the bill. Take a quick listen.
And the second question, the bill also includes a tax break for insurance executives that make more than $500,000. You said this is about patients. Why is that tax break important for this legislation?
To the latter, I'm not aware of that. I'll look into that. Drug pricing is really important.
So the question, and you may have missed it because it was very soft, the question that was being posed to Health and Human Services Secretary Tom Price was the reporter was letting him know that there is a provision for a tax break for executives who make over $500,000 a year. While gutting some key provisions, as we discussed on yesterday, and they roll out the Secretary Tom Price, and he's not even aware of that. He's not even aware. We're not talking about 2,000 pages of Obamacare. We're talking about the streamlined version, right? They didn't want that, so they took that. They took all of that, right? But they don't even know what's in it. And what's in it essentially is everything that they could possibly get away with as a giveaway to the wealthy, to the insurance agencies, to give it a more conservative tint, even above and beyond the fact that the entire framework of Obamacare in the first place is a conservative idea. But because of the nature of political opposition, we don't have any true statesmen. We have just political showmen. Because of that nature, they are willing to basically present something that essentially, and I think I have credit for the person who gave me this. If not, I'll try to give it to you. This is the difference between Obamacare and Trumpcare.